Hello, everyone, and welcome to our daily drop update for Big Brother Canada 11. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and this is, of course, not exactly daily, but it is an update from the Big Brother Canada 11 house. I'm here with the latest drop that dropped today here on the 26th of April, which gave us some things that happened yesterday on the in the house for Big Brother Canada 11. And it's actually a little more interesting than you might have thought. Not necessarily in terms of what we actually got, but in terms of where the house might actually move. If you thought that this week was a done deal, this may not be the case. There's actually some stuff to talk about. And it doesn't even involve Wendy's. So, let's get into it. Of course, as you know, Renee won the HOH. She nominated Ty and Danica. Ty won the veto, took himself down. Kuzi went up on the block as a replacement. And it seems as though Kuzi is for sure a goner at that point. And let's be clear, she still probably is. But some things have occurred. We started the drop with Kuzi talking to Ty. And Ty is saying, well, how do you bring up this Final Four idea to Renee? She says, well, I think Claudia should be the one to do it. And Ty says, I don't think Claudia will want to because she's scared that it will get back to Shania. He says, I think we just need to get the four of us in a room and say Final Four. It'll work. They're talking about, of course, an idea to propose a Final Four with the two of them, plus Claudia and Renee, leaving Shania out. The idea being that with Ty and Claudia's votes, Renee breaks the tie and keeps Kuzi. Now, you'd probably hear this and think, that's absurd. That would never work. Why would Claudia betray Shania? She's closer to Shania. Why would Claudia go along with this? Why would Renee go along with this? Claudia feels like she can't beat Kuzi, Ty, or Renee. Why would she want a Final Four with them? There's all kinds of reasons why Claudia would never go through with this. And she probably won't. But it might be a little more complicated than just exactly that. They go on to talk about how Ty says, you need to stay on top of Renee and prevent Shania and Danica from getting back in her head. Ty says, if we pull this off, we'll basically be guaranteed Final Four because I don't think Daniel will target us. And she agrees. She says, and hopefully the girls will also target Daniel over me. She goes on to say, I think I might be the villain of the season. And I think she's saying this because it becomes clear over the course of this drop. She has thrown Daniel and Danica under the bus quite hard, which is why they feel this plan has a chance of working. She says she also wants to be honest. She wants to try this. Ty disagrees, but she brings it up that she might tell Renee that she actually was planning to use the veto on Ty had she won it. In order to prove that she really isn't trying to work with Daniel and Anika anymore. Obviously, we didn't really get a lot from Kuzi prior to the veto competition. But basically, she's saying, and this could be a lie to Ty, of course, but she's saying that she actually, if she had won that veto, she would have used it on Ty and forced Daniel on the block. Now, she told Daniel basically the complete opposite yesterday. She was talking to Daniel about rooting for him in the jury, so on and so forth. But things have maybe changed a little bit. She says, Daniel and Anika are upset that I'm trying to stay here. What kind of game is that? Like, what do they want me to do? Ty says, well, Daniel asked me for advice on what to do this week, and I told him that obviously the play is to keep Kuzi. She's better at competitions for us. He says he'll keep working on Daniel. Kuzi needs to keep working on Claudia and Renee. So, again, Kuzi working closely with Ty. They're trying to pitch a Final Four with Renee and Claudia, trying to keep Kuzi in the game. And then some relationships have shifted here. The main one being, apparently, Kuzi is now keenly aware of how much Daniel and Anika have potentially kind of thrown her under the bus, and she has now done the same. Also worth noting, and we're going to get a little bit of this later, Ty and Claudia are getting closer again. We've seen them cuddling and stuff. But Claudia herself is going to come out and say that she's getting closer to Ty again. And so that might be where Ty feels like he might have some pull over Claudia. There's a conversation that we cut to between Renee, Claudia, and Shania. And this is the most sort of like, okay, Ty and Kuzi can talk all they want about, you know, making a Final Four, trying to keep Kuzi. Would Claudia be on board? So on and so forth. But again, it makes zero sense for Claudia to go along with any of that. So it doesn't really feel like it would mean anything until you see this conversation between Renee, Claudia, and Shania, where Claudia does start the conversation saying, yeah, I mean, the decision has been made. We're just trying to think some options through. And Shania says, well, they're coming for us regardless. So why keep the person that's harder for us to beat? And Claudia says, well, I don't have an option but to win, or I'll be walking out those doors. It's being voiced to me by multiple people that I'm being targeted. And of course, by multiple people, she means Ty and Kuzi. And Shania points that out. She said, I know you and Ty have that relationship, but this is coming from the two people that want Kuzi to stay, Kuzi herself and Ty. Obviously, they're going to say whatever they can. What they're talking about is that we find out that Kuzi went to Claudia and Shania and told them that Daniel and Anika are targeting them, trying to break them up. Now, we don't know for sure that this is true, but we do know that this is probably at least stemming from the conversation that I talked about yesterday between Daniel and Kuzi, when Daniel said that he would put Claudia and Shania on the block. Daniel kind of took his foot off the pedal, did not think that Kuzi would turn around and use this against him, but now she has. And now Claudia is very much fearing for her own life in the double eviction. She feels like she's going to be targeted by basically the entire house, which is probably the case. But you know, who knows? Renee says, honestly, it's kind of believable. I mean, we saw the way they turned on Kuzi, so they could easily do the same to us. Shania says, well, I disagree. I think they turned on Kuzi because of the way that she spoke to them and undermined their games and so on and so forth. Remember, like, I think that was sort of a natural progression. I don't think they like betrayed her. It was sort of like she pushed them away. And Renee says, that's a good point. I agree with that. Claudia says, well, Shania, it's easy. This is kind of the tone of this. It's easy for you to say all this because you're closer with them than I am. And they'd target me before they'd target you. And Shania says, well, look, the positive to all of this is that at least it now seems like Kuzi is more bitter toward those guys than she is toward us. So that's better for us when it comes to the jury. So clearly, Kuzi got into Claudia's head. Kuzi and Ty, I guess, combined, really got into Claudia's head. And she's very scared that Daniel and Anika will come for her, which, again, is probably true or might be true. Shania has a point, though. She's wrong in that they should trust Daniel and Anika because Daniel and Anika are not trustworthy, but perhaps right in the sense that Daniel and Anika are a lot easier to beat than Kuzi and Ty. I mean, there's no world where Claudia should keep Kuzi and Ty together in the game. But she's right to be fearful for her own life in the game at the same time, right? And so it's clear that they've gotten to her a bit, and she's thinking about this. The fact that she's thinking about it at all is kind of ridiculous to me. So kudos to Ty and Kuzi for getting this work in. So there's a little bit of back and forth there, and clearly a little bit of a little bit of a rift between Claudia and Shania in this conversation. So we started strong with this drop. I mean, all of this stuff is happening in the first, bit of this drop, and it's like, whew, are we getting some good content today? And then the producer said, no, you're not, because then we had nothing for like an hour and a half. They're looking for Marsha. There was an HOH lockdown. They think that there's something in the house. They can't find anything. Daniel thinks that Marsha's behind the dog portrait, which actually I think might be a decent call. But they're looking for stuff, all of that, this is not an indication that there's any power, again, like, what would be an indication that there's a power is if they stopped doing the drops. In my opinion, nobody should be getting excited about a power until the drops stop. That's when something is happening. Because they're not going to show us. They're not going to show us. So if we don't get a drop tomorrow, that's when you should be like, ooh, here we go. So we get through all of that nonsense, and we get to the end of the drop, where Anika is going to have a conversation with both Claudia and Shania. Now, this is kind of interesting how these conversations go, but this is, of course, going to be the end of the drop. So, there wasn't much in today's drop that we actually got. Just the implications of the few things we did get are kind of interesting, both honestly for this week and for the future, because not only is it like a glimmer of hope for Kuzi, and I don't really think it's going to land, because it just, if Claudia thinks about it for more than 2 seconds, I can't imagine that she would turn on Shania to go with Renee and Kuzi and Ty. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. But the fact that she's even thinking about it is way more than I ever thought Kuzi had a chance. But even beyond that, there are implications to the game that go further, right? Where is Ty in all of this? Is Ty now anti-Daniel and Anika? Is Ty now working with Claudia again? Is that possible? Will her decision to not keep Kuzi, if that's the decision she goes with, will that change that? Is Kuzi now actually anti-Daniel and Anika? Will she go to the jury being anti-Daniel and Anika? How could that change things? There's a lot of potential big implications from the events of this week / drop. So Anika talks to Claudia. She says, listen, I know you spoke with Kuzi, so if you have any questions, I just want to chat. Claudia says, well, okay. I mean, I'm wondering what you would do if you were to win power, because there's a lot of things being said. Anika says, well, let me start by saying this, just in case this is what Kuzi's telling you. It doesn't mean anything that Kuzi didn't put you on the block in previous weeks, because the only reason she didn't put you on the block in previous weeks is that there were bigger targets in the game. Number two, we obviously have this alliance that we formed, and we formed it because we saw some things that Kuzi was doing. Though, and this alliance developed organically prior to this week. It wasn't us trying to fight for our lives. It was something that we came together because, we were drifting from Kuzi and we were drifting toward you. And Claudia says, okay, that's great. And she says to Kuzi, on a personal level, me and Ty are connecting again. But I do still think he needs to go. Right, Anika? Like, this is her asking again. You're targeting Ty next week, right, Anika? And Anika says, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm targeting Ty, and if I get power, you have nothing to worry about. And I also appreciate what Renee did for us this week, targeting Ty, taking Kuzi out when Ty won the veto. So, like, I wouldn't even want to target her. I'd want to target Ty. And Claudia says, well, I wouldn't mind sitting on the block initially, but I assume Renee would be the replacement for Ty if he were to win the veto. And Anika again says, absolutely. I would honor my deal with Renee this week by not putting her up initially, but at the end of the day, my loyalty is to you and Shania over her, so she would be the one to go up. So ultimately, with Claudia kind of pulling it out of her, she gives the correct answer, the answer she should be giving. They both agree that Kuzi and Renee would both easily beat them in the final two, and so would Ty. Hope even called Ty a legend before he left the game. Which, again, I do believe that Claudia believes this. It's just one of the main reasons why I feel like there's no way Claudia actually goes along with this potential Final Four plan, because she thinks she loses to Renee, Kuzi, and Ty. So why would she ever go to the Final Four with the three of them? But you never know. Claudia says she appreciates the conversation and Anika has nothing to worry about this week. So she is giving Anika that reassurance. Anika says, well, I don't know if Kuzi said anything about me specifically. Did she say anything about me specifically? And she's asking like she knows what Kuzi said about her. I don't know if she knows, but if I were Claudia, I would think that she knows, if that makes sense. But Claudia says no. She mostly just talked about her own game. This is worth noting because it says a couple of things. One, Claudia did hint that Kuzi had said some things about her, right? She said she said a lot of things are being said about what Anika might do as the HOH next week. But when directly asked, she did not tell Anika that Kuzi told her that Anika and Daniel would target her. So that obviously means that she's, in a sense, protecting Kuzi, right? In a sense, not trusting Anika with that information. So that's an indication of where she stands. And what's also interesting is that, again, not only might Anika already know about this information when asking about it, but she's about to directly find out because right after Claudia, Anika calls in Shania. And she asks Shania the same question right off the bat. I know you talked to Kuzi. Did Kuzi have anything to say about me? And Shania gives up the goods right away. Shania says, yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. Kuzi said that you and Daniel are coming for me and Claudia. And Anika gives the response of like, what? That's not happening. Didn't seem too surprised though, again. So I would again feel like she might have known this already. But even if she didn't, she now does. And she also now knows that Claudia straight up just lied to her face, right? That Claudia said, no, Kuzi didn't say anything about you. She just talked about her own game, calls in Shania right after. And Shania says, yeah, she said that you two are coming for us. So not the best idea from Claudia, I think, to keep that information in. If Shania is going to be divulging it right away. And so again, the implications of this meaning, there's still a chance that Claudia is feeling like she might want to keep Kuzi if she's holding that information in. And if she doesn't, then the fact that she's holding that information in only further increases the odds of what she fears is going to happen, will happen, which is that, Daniel and Anika might target her because, now they have even more reason to. She clearly is not telling us about what Kuzi is saying. So, look, I'm doing my best with what little we're being given here. So Shania says that. Shania says that Kuzi told us that you and Daniel are targeting us, but she says, I don't believe it. And I thought it was interesting too. Shania, I'm pretty sure, says specifically, I don't believe it. She did not say we don't believe it. She says, it doesn't make sense to me. And Anika says, yeah, of course it doesn't make any sense because it makes no sense. Why would we come for you when Ty and Renee are still in the game? And here's the deal. Here's the thing, right? Anika, and I think Anika does a good job here with Shania as well. Because the main thing to point out if you're Anika And she did this with Claudia to a degree also. But the main thing to point out as Anika is Kuzi doesn't know about our alliance. Kuzi doesn't know that we've had an alliance for a couple of weeks now. So obviously that's her mistake. She thinks she's going to like lie and make this thing up, but what she doesn't know is that we're actually in an alliance. She wouldn't be even trying to say that if she knew that we were in an alliance, right? And that's a very good point, right? Kuzi, if she had this real dirt on Daniel and Danica, would probably also know that they had an alliance. If she doesn't know that they have an alliance, then she probably doesn't know the truth about what they would actually do because they don't tell her about what they're doing, right? Now, as we might be actually seeing, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't actually tell her what they were actually going to do. But it's a pretty good argument, I think, a pretty good case to make, fairly convincing. And Shania seems pretty convinced. Claudia, on the other hand, not as much. So that's kind of where we stand at the moment. This is, of course, what's happening on Tuesday, which means that not only is there a full day left, I don't know exactly what time this was that we got this drop, but there's what's left of Tuesday and then basically a full day today on Wednesday for this to happen, for anything to happen at this point. So, is there a chance for Kuzi to stay? Honestly, much more so than I would have thought yesterday when Kuzi was saying, I'm not even going to try. And the girly pops were all saying, Kuzi sucks. We hate her. We don't respect her. Big 180 from that situation. But they're still pretty far from actually getting to the promised land of safety. So just keep an eye out. I mean, the much more interesting update today than I thought we were going to get. Maybe we'll have another interesting update tomorrow. Maybe not. We'll find out. But again, even without the Kuzi stuff, this does still have potential implications for the future. In particular, where does Ty go from here? With Kuzi leaving, who does he target? Who does he align with? Who does he want to bring to the end? That's hugely important because Ty is the best competitor left in the house. And if he survives the double eviction, which there's a decent chance he will, he's going to have some say over who is going with him to the end if he keeps winning comps. And then there's also the Kuzi factor. Is she really mad at Daniel and Anika? I think she's more mad at Anika based on how they're talking. There's a lot of animosity toward Anika. There's a little bit of like, we could maybe still get Daniel. But that might change over time. So what does that do for jury votes and the Crown? All members of the Crown so far have left the game saying, we're Crown strong. We're going to vote for Crown over anyone else. But they also really respect Kuzi. So if Kuzi comes in and says, yeah, they're traitors to the Crown, that could be significant. That could really change up how things are moving with jury votes. So interesting stuff. And for Daniel and Anika, this is a tough thing. This is a tough thing. It's a true test. A lot of people play Big Brother. They go in, they play all sides, and they're pretty good at it, right? You can get some goodwill over here, get some goodwill over here, especially if you're not super great at competitions. You don't ever have to really prove yourself, to one side or the other. It's not an easy thing to do, but a lot of people can get to this point. The first true big test of these kinds of players tends to be, can you then let go one of your close allies without getting caught? Something that happens to a lot of these players. They get caught because they're not sad enough. They're not fighting hard enough for their allies. And it seems like possibly this is where Daniel and Anika might trip up. Anika kind of already had gotten tripped up, but Daniel seemed like he was in the perfect position just yesterday. And now today, maybe a little bit caught up. Maybe took his foot off that gas just a little bit, trusted Kuzi with a little bit too much of information. And Who knows? We'll see. This could all be wild speculation based on nothing. Maybe they're still totally fine. Maybe they're doing the plan that I talked about yesterday, which is for Kuzi to pretend like she's angry at Daniel. Because, again, the girly pops are now saying, oh, well, at least Kuzi's now against Daniel and Anika in the jury. Maybe that's not even true. Maybe for Daniel it's not true. I don't know. But anyway, either way, that's what we've got for you today. Thank you for joining me. Of course, I'll be live later tonight for the on twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong, watching tonight's episode of Big Brother Canada 11 live with all of you. Should be a more fun one than yesterday's, I think, because the veto competition is going to happen, the koozie stuff is going to happen, and then hey, Thursday's episode might be somewhat interesting as well with all of what's happening right now, and of course the double eviction as well. I'll also be watching Survivor, so come and hang out for that. And then tomorrow, another update. Maybe I'll update you tomorrow and say, guys, it's happening. Or maybe I won't. And then, all that good stuff. Survivor Stock Watch podcast going as well if you're watching Survivor this season. And that's about it. Make sure you go to robswebsite.com/Toronto if you want to get tickets for our live show on May 11th for the finale of Big Brother Canada 11. That's what I got for you. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I will see all of you next time.